Good evening, campers, streamers, and babysitters, and welcome to our raw reaction review of Living with Chucky.
I am Chucky, the killer dog, and I dig it!
Alrighty, yes, so we are sitting here talking about something we've been pretty excited about. We always circle back to the Sunday Scaries, and we definitely covered this because we cover a lot of Chucky stuff on here. Ever since Luke took the cap off with Child's Play 2 on the podcast, God, that was what, almost a year ago now? Last
Not
spring?
quite.
Not quite? Okay, I thought it was a little bit earlier. It was like what, like 3-4 episodes in?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly I can't remember. It was a little, I don't know. We'll have to look.
We'll check it out. But point being, yeah, when they announced that they were doing a Chucky documentary, just kind of going into the life of Chucky, and not just that, but the actors and the families behind it, and just kind of how they were going to tell their side of the story and what it was like making these movies and living through these movies. Obviously, we were pretty intrigued. And I got to say, we were very much looking forward to this. Chucky's become a staple in my household. My son is absolutely obsessed with the little guy. Anytime I put on Child's Play or the Chucky TV show, he's just glued to it. But hey, got to start him off somewhere, right? But anyway, yeah, we were looking forward to this. And Luke, I got to know, since you were the one to usher me into the world of Child's Play and really get me back on the bandwagon here, how'd you feel about Living with Chucky?
I'll tell you, I was really excited for this one. We've had what we covered, the It documentary just a little while ago. There's a lot of great horror documentaries from a couple years ago as well that a lot of people speak very highly of that are really well done. So anytime these kind of horror docs show up, we are pretty eager to check them out just to kind of get the backstories. The horror genre just has such interesting backstories to a lot of times of how these films come to be, and especially when they're turned into a franchise. And Chucky's been one of those ones where there are small docs out there, but there hasn't really been a comprehensive documentary out there that really kind of goes step by step through all these different films. And Chucky is one of those. Got a later start in the 80s, with the slasher subgenre, and then kind of going into the 90s and died for a little bit, and then kind of came back late 90s with a little bit of a tweak to the genre and adding different elements with the Tiffany doll and everything. And then really kind of fell by the wayside, I think, a little bit over the past, decade of more so going straight to Blu-ray and DVD. With Curse and Cult, and not really getting the big theatrical releases anymore. Then along came the Chucky series and kind of breathed new life into the franchise. And that kind of spawned us doing the Child's Play 2 and then Primetime Terrors. So I got to say, I was really excited to kind of see this big doc coming out and being able to witness kind of just the behind the scenes and getting, they talked to a bunch of the major players here, and finally being able to see this, and it was just so well done. I know I texted you after watching it, said that this may be my favorite doc out of the horror genre so far. I got to say, because they do touch on a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but then they touch on the families, and I think it's such a heartfelt kind of doc.
There's a lot of passion behind the creation of this documentary, yes. And I think that definitely touching into the third act is going to be huge. I think it is what's going to set this one apart
Yes.
from its counterparts, where it's like, I think each of these docs, if we're talking all the way back to Crystal Lake Memories and the Nightmare on Elm Street doc and everything, and then, of course, Pennywise, and then they had Hellraiser and all these other great ones on Screambox, it's like, you can really get excited for them because you're just going to get into the minutia of how these films that we love were brought to the big screen. But again, like you said, what I think really sets this one apart is the fact that we get to kind of see everything from the other side of the aisle. We get to see how these people who, they're just like us, they have families, they have kids, and they're sacrificing weeks of their lives, not making films in their backyard anymore. They're making them, across the country, across the world sometimes. And they have to deal with that. And what are the ramifications of that when it comes to having to, leave your kids, leave your wife, leave your family for weeks on end to go make a killer doll movie? You know what I mean? and just what that does to them. But to see where they are now and just how grateful they are to have these stories, and to see that so many of them have their children in the industry now, and they've been able to grow up and kind of become a part of this, and just what Chucky has meant to them. And especially for our director here, Kira Gardner. I mean, like, her father, after, I think it was, they said in the doc, wasn't it? He came on board for Child's Play 3, I believe.
Tony,
Yeah, Tony Gardner.
he started taking over, I believe, during wasn't it Seed of Chucky
Seed
when
of
they came?
Chucky, that's what
Yep.
it was. So yeah, he came on board during Seed of Chucky, and that's when her life kind of got flipped turned around, and she got to really dive deep into the world of Chucky. And like it says, living with Chucky, she lived with these dolls, coming home with her dad, and just him always working on these films and things like that. And among others, I mean, like him working on things like Hocus Pocus and stuff like that. She kind of got to sit in the bullpen with all these creatives and really get to see the stuff made. So the fact that she's come out now and made this wonderful documentary, it's a real testament to just the lasting effect that not only horror films but cinema in general can have on somebody. And I thought this was really, really well done and very heartfelt.
Yeah, and that's where it's like I think what sets this apart is that intimacy. That you look at a lot of the things that come before this in terms of the horror documentaries. It's usually someone from the outside looking in, getting those interviews and wondering, how this has affected everyone's life that's worked on this film because they're such big fans of it. And this one really comes from the lens of someone who has dealt with this franchise, being a kid and growing up in that life and knowing a lot of these players and finally sitting down with them and really talking shop in a sense and really getting those experiences and seeing what it means to everyone in the franchise. And it's like, I love that the what probably an hour of this is more so them kind of documenting, from the original Child's Play all the way up to where they are with Cult of Chucky. And then we kind of get into the real intimate storytelling. That's the relationship of Fiona Dorff and Brad Dorff, and then also looking at the Gardners as well. And it's like, it's such a family affair when we come to Chucky. And I think, like, I've always loved the Child's Play franchise, but like sitting with this documentary and then kind of watching it and then really thinking about it, there is so much love in this franchise, particularly where you look at it from the very first film all the way up to what's going on now with Chucky the TV series. A lot of people have continuously stuck with this franchise, and they really do feel like this relationship with a killer doll, which is a lot of fun, and it's really great. I think this horror documentary in particular really expresses the love that the horror community can have. It's like going into how families are affected, and then also going into how they go to the conventions and what they see with so many kids dressing up as Chucky or Tiffany, which I know from a personal aspect. Me and Dylan both have talked about, dressing up our children as Tiffany as well as Chucky, So it's one of those things where this one really resonated with me. Once you get to that third act, it's like, you don't really get emotional when you watch these documentaries, but I felt myself getting a little more emotional with this one just because I can draw those parallels of where we're at with our podcast and taking time away to do things like this. And then also where we're at with our children and everything. It's like I've talked
Mhm.
about having that Tiffany Valentine doll and giving it to my daughter eventually when she's old enough. And it's just like, I think Chucky has moved up a few notches in my book in terms of just the love I have for this horror franchise.
I know, it's wild that we have kids, and then suddenly Chucky becomes this out of nowhere. Honestly, this huge influence to both of us with that, with you and the Tiffany Valentine doll, and then just my son just out of nowhere just becoming wildly obsessed with this guy. Like, he's literally got a bunch of little plush horror characters thanks to Luke here and myself just going out and getting them, and he carries around all of them. But I tell you, he carries around Chucky the most. And yeah, it's absolutely wonderful to see that not only transfer for us as horror fans, but the folks behind the scenes. And I think that that's what's going to make this documentary very special for a lot of folks who check this out, is the fact that it is something that you really do see the love put on display for this franchise. And you kind of get to see Chucky in a different light. You know, a lot of us like to see Chucky doing the hacking and the slashing and the one liners and everything. And that's all fun and games. But to see him just where he started off and where it all came from. And I think some of my favorite points in this have to be with Brad and Fiona Dorff, just discussing, you know, the torch being passed between them and just how Fiona has kind of stepped into this franchise and she's starting to become a bigger face. I mean, along with the TV show, which they don't touch on a lot because I think this was being made at the time the series was being made. But it is something where it's like they really get to dive in and see that continuation and just the love that each and every one of these legacy characters who's gotten to come back to the franchise. And of course, that all really goes back to Don Mancini as well. And they pay heavy tribute to him, just in the sense of showing that he never really left anybody behind. You know, like Andy's come back, you know, we've got Kyle coming back. It's like all these great people have come back to this franchise one way or another. And I think that it's just what's kept Chucky fresh and kept him alive and kept him going. I mean, we've been very positive about the 2 seasons of the series that we've reviewed, and we're very much looking to season 3. And I'm excited to see whatever this team has to do with Chucky from here on out. And to have this documentary go along with it, I mean, it's an ace in the hole. I absolutely loved it. And I love a lot of these documentaries. I do. Is this my favorite of them all? Like Lucas said, I don't know about that yet. I'm going to have to see where it sits with me. But definitely, out of all of them, I agree with you. I felt the emotions a lot in this one.
Yeah, and just even like you said, the dwarfs, the gardeners, where there is this kind of their family. They're it's 100% that's their blood family. But then looking at like the relationship Don Mancini has with Alex Vincent, and they touch on Child's Play 3 and Alex Vincent not being associated with that one,
Yeah.
and then kind of coming back into Curse of Chucky and Don Mancini reaching out to Alex saying, I'm writing this part, I'm trying to get it through the studio, and it's like bringing him back into the forefront, especially as one of the main characters in the Chucky series. It's such a family affair, even when you're not blood related, but it's just this kinship of what this franchise has created from even looking at Alex Vincent as a child and growing up, with Don Mancini in his life. And then even like looking at the producer David Kirshner and him kind of talking about there's a question in there about how it's affected his life and
Yeah.
that, and he goes, no one's really ever asked me that, and he goes, thank you for caring. It's like it is such an intimate documentary. It's like even if it didn't mean to be initially, that's what it had evolved into by the time they were filming this. It's like, yeah, you get the stuff with the storytelling of all the franchise and how that has come to be, but then when you really focus on that third act of people talking to people and those relationships that have evolved from what the just a random killer doll movie in the late 80s, and who knew it was going to take on this kind of life and have this effect that it has personally with so many people. And that's where this documentary excels to the fullest extent, where for me, I haven't had those feelings ever watching a horror documentary, but Living with Chucky really brought that out. It's one of those things that's just going to sit with me for a while.
Absolutely. It could be the two sappy dads coming out and really,
Hit at the
pushing
right
this thing
time.
up for us. But yeah, no, it's just one of those things where the ending sequences with, Tony Gardner and Kira Gardner too, were really, really emotional and really well
Yep.
done. Him talking about how it always hurt him to, leave his kids and have to go make these movies. But it's like kind of that double-edged sword of, you gotta, support your family and provide for your family. But at the same time, you miss a birthday. And it really puts that in perspective for, at least me, and I'm sure for you who want to work in this industry one day and want to create content, is it's just like, man, like, what can I do to, prevent that? And what can I do to, make sure I'm there for every birthday and everything like that? And it's just like the sacrifices that these people made just to put these films on screen for us. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And to have a documentary that again paints it for us and shows us, and again, it starts off like you said, that first hour is really just we're getting the standard, as we've expected with like a Crystal Lake Memories or a Nightmare on Elm Street doc, where it's like, we're going through each of the films, we're getting that, we're getting the funny stories, but that emotional core, that gut punch they hit you with the last 40 minutes is just oh my God, like really bang up stuff. And I think it's pretty safe to say that we're both going to recommend this very highly for you guys to check out on Screambox when it drops on April 4th. I think that this is definitely one that, even if you're not a big Chucky fan, I think as a horror fan, you should check this out because it really, again, gets you into the minutia and the behind the scenes of what it takes to make these films and what it takes to bring them to the big screen. And I could easily see, if you're not a big Chucky fan, watching this and this kind of swaying you into checking the movies out because
Yeah.
it does give you that longer lasting appreciation of the fact that, again, I still have a lot of blank slates in the franchise. I'm waiting until we cover them or we have an opportunity to cover them on the show before I check out Curse and, Cult of Chucky. And those, to me, before, I thought were, oh, they're just the direct to DVD kind of, ones, the whatever. But then seeing the documentary and seeing the light and what they put into them, I mean, I honestly am really eager to check those out now because I'm just excited to see what they brought for us and the care that was put into it.
Yeah, and I honestly, looking at that portion of the documentary is, it kind of giving me the initiative to go back and, do the reappraisal of Child's Play 3 as well as Seed of Chucky. And I have seen Curse. I gotta say, Curse is a bang up job. Definitely, that one is phenomenal. If you haven't seen it yet, Cult I haven't seen yet either, but now I'm very intrigued to check that one out as well. So, if you haven't really dove too deep into the Play franchise and maybe you've only seen the first one or the first and second one, definitely check out the documentary just because I think it's going to give you that push to definitely dive deep into the franchise because it's well worth it just with uh, the storytelling that's involved, the effects that are on display in the entire franchise, and of course, the people that are involved that you do see in this documentary is something that I think you're going to. This documentary is very intimate, and I think going into it and in diving into the franchise, you're going to have this intimate level with a killer doll, apparently. So it's very intriguing. Living with Chucky, yeah, I can't recommend more highly. Very good stuff.
Absolutely. But alrighty, guys, that's going to wrap us up here for our review of Living with Chucky. Definitely high praise from both Luke and I on this one. Definitely check it out on April 4th on Screambox. And again, want to thank the folks over at Screambox for providing the screener for us so we could get this review out to you guys. We have a lot of good stuff coming down the pipeline. Believe me, this is not the last time. Even this week that we're going to be discussing Living with Chucky. So stay tuned. We got a nice little treat coming for you guys later this week. But yeah, no, I definitely recommend checking this thing out, as well as if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We are always trying to provide the earliest and most in-depth content that we can as far as everything goes in the horror realm. And if you're a Chucky fan just discovering us, check out our review of Chucky season 1 and 2. Season 1, we do a whole shebang. We got the whole thing there in one video where we check it all out. And then season 2, we go through each and every episode bit by bit and then conclude with a large scale review of the entire season, as well as our Child's Play 2 podcast and more Chucky stuff to come. Other than that, we do have a lot of great stuff up on the channel as always. So definitely go ahead and check that out. And yeah, definitely give us a follow. We're on our way to 1,000 subscribers and I hope we can get there by May 9th. But yeah, so I guess until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.